welcome to another Writer Showcase, everybody. I'm glad that you could be here. Anyway, allow me to quickly bring on my wonderful guests, starting with... let's see, what's a good one? Okay, let's do...
Tell me. Do you bleed? You will.
Hello, Kareem. How's it going?
Hello, and thank you for having me. It is always an honor to be here. I'm doing pretty well. How about you?
I'm doing pretty well, let's just bring in the other guests. Please welcome first, Valerian.
Pretty much. What was that?
Welcome, Valerian.
Thank you. I was in a different tab, so I didn't even see what that was, but it sounded very fraught.
It looked like a bunch of barbarians throwing axes at each other, and one of them got an axe stuck to his back.
Oh,
this is,
okay.
I can play it again.
Oh, it wasn't actually a barbarian, it was a priest.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it looks as though it looks as though what is it, like it's being thrown on a string or something. It's so stupid.
Well, that's how old movies were like. They had to do with what they got.
Yeah, this is the 90s. It was a cheap, pretty badly written miniseries. The only good things are the actors that are way too good for the material.
Okay, which was this?
The Merlin miniseries. You remember that one?
That.
Yeah.
Oh, that. The King Arthur's reign in 20 minutes. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, anyways. All right, let's bring in Wasia. I'm going to be using a different intro, but I feel like it's appropriate.
Fuck you! I was right! Fuck you! I was right! Fuck you! I was right! I'm sorry. How in any way, shape, or form was that appropriate?
He must have been right about something.
Because most of your predictions are correct.
Such as?
That Kenobi would be bad.
Ah. Well,
that Rings of Power would be an insult towards the Lord of the Rings.
And and the intelligence of everybody who watches it.
To be fair, that's about as predictable as the sun rising the next day.
I created a new
Not very
emoji
impressive.
for Boorman Sauron.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed.
I created a few new ones.
Okay. So that's what you wanted me to give you the emote maker role for.
Well, I didn't know precisely what, but but those ones were pretty obvious ones.
You just wanted to make them. Okay.
I mean, I didn't have a specific one in mind, but those ones are pretty obvious ones, so.
All right. So just a little note, my position over here in today's live stream, it's completely tentative. I will only be over here so long as nobody else shows up.
Okay.
Because technically, I marked myself off as tentative, not as I am definitely going to be showing up here. So if somebody else who really wanted to come on shows up, I'll happily trade out with them.
Well, I've notified everybody, so if nobody else, you can just go first. It's fine.
Oh, well, the only thing is,
or do you have something, Valerian?
I actually have to go to lunch, too. So I either have to be at the beginning or I have to be like way at the end.
Okay, then let's do Valerian, then Wasia, then Kareem, and then me. Or
yeah, sorry about that.
No worries, that's fine. Go ahead.
Sounds fair to me.
Okay, this is Harry Potter if a postmodern teenage fangirl, Mary Sue character, turned up in it. So let's see what happens. Oh dear. Geraldine was like born in a brothel because they knew Voldemort wouldn't like look for her in there. And she was hidden because she was part house elf, part centaur, part mermaid, part human. So the Death Eaters would be after her. And she was prophesied to be the greatest witch in history. And she would kill Voldemort. And Harry Potter would be her like sidekick and stuff. And like love interest. Her parents got killed by Voldemort too. No, who made them read fanfic till they gagged and died a horrible death. That was nasty. This is kind of like, as you can tell, this is a precursor to the communist rabbits. Regina got lots of angst from that, but afterwards it got worse because she was not only raised by muggles who hated magic, she was raised by pimps and prostitutes who hated magic. So a million years of therapy or even reading post-colonial theory couldn't help. She had incredible powers and could like move mountains and read minds and stuff, but she didn't know how to use her powers and thought she was out of her mind because no one could do such stuff. So thinking she'd lose her mind gave her lots of angst and stuff. Though her powers did come in handy if the pimp who'd adopted her tried to do anything disgusting. Sometimes she turned invisible and visited Harry's school and protected Harry from the bullies, but she could only do this when she could give the brothel people the slip because they were busy, apparently, flouting societal norms but really oppressing women's. And she went to a nasty inner city school with lots of gang crap going on. Then when she was 11, she started getting owl letters saying she was going to Hogwarts. And since she lived in LA, she didn't know how she was going to get there or get her accessories because she didn't know where Diagon Alley was. But fortunately, the brothel was right next to a New Age store, and the stuff was way better than the stuff in Diagonal Alley. And her parents had left her lots of money, but had cleverly hidden it in the library because no one went there. And she knew this because she did. And though when I say no, I don't imply that conventional views of knowledge are, quote, true, end quote. Then Dumbledore came to the brothel, and I don't know what he did there, but when he was done, he picked up Geraldine and took her to Hogwarts because she was too important to leave to Hagrid, who was busy with Harry anyway. And then when it came time to put on the sorting hat, he decided she was so brilliant that she belonged to all four houses. She spent the first night in Gryffindor with Hermione. I know everything, said Hermione. No, you don't. Even I don't know everything, but I know more than you because I'm destined, said Geraldine. Yeah, right, said Hermione, but Geraldine just smiled. Geraldine went to chat with Harry and Ron. Harry rules because he's destined, said Ron. Cool, so am I, said Geraldine. I don't know anything, and I'm doomed because the other wizards will fry me, said Harry. No, they won't. You gotta believe in yourself, said Geraldine, and she did a song and dance routine, and everyone joined in. Now, everyone knew about Harry having a destiny, but they didn't know about Geraldine because it was kept secret, so Harry could be a decoy. Malfoy went to Geraldine and said, "You suck, because you're not purebred, and Americans sucks. They don't have no class." But Geraldine said, "Shut up. Americans are cool, because we have all the cool pop culture spelling and hairstyles and the best postmodern theory people, and you're perpetuating outmoded power structures. I'm descended from ISIS and Shazam, which is better than you, because they're in Saturday cartoons and your ancestors aren't. And I'd rather be mixed blood than weird inbred wizards like you. And And purebred sounds like a dog. And I bet your mother's name was Sweet Polly Purebred. And you're a structuralist, so you sucks. So bug off. Everyone laughed while Malfoy slunk away. Pardon me. They went into Snape's... Pardon me, I shouldn't laugh. They went into Snape's class, and Snape said, 50 points from Gryffindor because you suck, Potter. Stop being a jerk, Snape, said Geraldina. 50 more points from Gryffindor, said Snape. I'm not in Gryffindor. I'm in all the houses because the hat knew I'm good enough for all of them, and you can't take points from me or put me in detention. Only Dumbledore can do that because I'm special, and your authoritarian model of school governance is passé, said Geraldina. Oh? Well, I'll have to talk to Dumbledore about that, said Snape. You do that, said Geraldina with a laugh. Then she made a perfect coolness potion that made whoever drank it cool. And Hermione was jealous because Geraldina was at the head of all the classes. So she said, you're not as smart as you think you are, girl. And Geraldina laughed and said, your ego's even bigger than your hair, Hermione. But then Geraldina felt bad for Hermione because she was lonely and no one liked her. So she made friends with her. Then she introduced her to Ron and Harry, and they explored the castles using Harry's invisibility cloak and Geraldina's mystery mist, which made her unplottable and was color coordinated. And also Geraldina is the only human being who can control Peeves because she is a Gastelmouth. That was like totally brilliant when you dissed Snape and he couldn't do anything about it, said Ron. You like rule. Snape's trying to kill Harry, added Hermione. I saw him doing a spell during the Quidditch game and Harry's broom went out of control, but I stopped him. Yeah, and he wants to get the sorcerer's stone, said Harry. He got it attacked by Fluffy. He's like evil and stuff. No, he's not evil. He's just a jerk, said Geraldina. He was saving Harry from Squirrel. Squirrel was cursing Harry, but when Hermione tripped him, that broke the spell. He wants to bring back Voldemort. Don't say the name, said Ron. Don't be wuss. Everyone is cool says the name, said Geraldina. Yeah, but how do you know all this stuff? Said Harry. Oh, sorry. I'm not going to discuss epistemology because you can read about that in Husserl, but I know stuff because I'm a leg lemon, so I read minds, said Geraldina. But anyway, we got to make a plan to stop Squirrel so he can't kill Harry, or almost kill Harry because he won't be able to touch Harry because Harry was loved. But going after him will still be a drag, so I'd rather do it in the school, not the place where they're keeping the stone. When you and Ron will have more time to play Nintendo, and Hermione and me can do each other's hair, because I know lots of magic hairstyles. Yeah, but it might be fun to get Sorcerer's Stone anyway, said Harry, just to say we did. Okay, said Geraldina, but we're stopping Squirrel first. They all agreed, and in the next dark arts class, Geraldina raised her hand. What? Said Squirrel. I know you're evil, and you tried to kill Harry, and you're possessed by Voldemort, said Geraldina. Voldemort's bad because he's hostile. Spell it? Take over on the other wizards and won't let house elves unionize. Bullcrap, said Squirrel. Did you write your essay on why vampires suck? Ages ago, said Irina. But don't change the subject. I know you're evil, and I'm stopping you. And she turned Squirrel's turban into a top hat that looked totally lame. And Voldemort said, I'm not wearing this. And left because Squirrel's new fashion sense sucked. Then she and the others turned Squirrel into Pac-Man, and he died of lameness. And they went and got through the Guardians and saw the stone, but it was lame, so they let a Dumbledore do whatever with it. Then they got lots of points, but Derrydina got more than all the other houses put together. And they went home, and life for Harry sucks because he was at Privet Drive and Derrydina was in the brothel in L.A. She persuaded the pimp to move the brothel to Little Whinging so she could help Harry, but they couldn't move till August, so Harry still had to have a sucky month. No, I'm sorry. Still had to have a sucky life with the Muggle lamers. And that's chapter that's chapter 1.
Oh boy,
Okay.
that's
Okay.
god damn, that was insufferable.
That sounds like my Immortal being read by Eric Cartman. I like it. I like it a lot.
Thank you.
So this is a parody of Mary Sue fiction?
Yeah, parody of fanfic, Mary Sue's. Mary Sue's were very big back then, unlike now, of course.
It was a dark time. I'm glad that we are past it.
This is a triumphantly glorious moment in the story.
Now we have more Mary Sue's now in popular media than ever we've gotten almost as much as fan fiction.
Father.
Yeah, that's true. It's actually much worse than it was back then. At least the fanfic Mary Sue's were in some way endearing. The ones that are currently present are just horrible and annoying.
Or even, you could ignore fan fiction as just, oh, it's some losers on the internet who's not talented enough to write anything, and there's someone inserting a whole bunch of lame things. Now it's like, no, you can get paid hundreds of $1,000.
You're breaking up.
Bad fan fiction.
You're breaking up, Bright Lord.
Oh, crap. I don't know what the problem is.
Breaking up, Lord.
That's unfortunate.
Supreme Master of the Universe.
Oh no, please no. The universe can't be that cruel.
Oh, come on. Bright Lord can't be that bad. Can he?
It's a meme that he's like the worst thing ever. It's kind of a meme.
Oh.
Die screaming kind of meme. Basically, it's kind of a meme.
Well, it can be as bad as the idea of me making a clone army of myself and sending them off to turn all the women in the world to lovable housewives.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, there's a bunch of other chapters too, but I'm not going to have time to do the second chapter now. I mean, maybe I could do it at the end if I'm still here at the end. And did JK add those cruel and mean words? No. I mean, they're all like really snarky teenagers. So that's how they're 11, but it's written by snarky teenagers, so everyone talks like a snarky teenager.
Yeah, that sounds very cute.
Like,
I think
totally.
I think that it's actually like written by stone surfer dudes, not teenagers.
It's
Well,
written by Eric Cartman.
who are those two? Somebody and Teddy? Ted and somebody?
Bill and Ted.
Yes. Yeah, I never actually read those. So
Don't you mean watched them? They're only
watched
exist
that,
in movie
whatever.
form. They only
Watched,
exist in movie
read,
form.
listen to, ate, whatever.
Fair enough. I've only watched parts, I think like the last half of the first movie, I think. And I'm just like, this was very amusing, but Keanu Reeves is way better than John Wick. And I don't know where the other guy is. And the other guy is, I don't even know his name or what else he's been in.
Hmm.
Alrighty.
All right.
This is,
So anybody? Oh,
I don't even know, but like Valerian, I don't even know what the audience of this is, to be perfectly honest.
Well, this stuff. It was written for my circle of friends at the time. And
Mhm.
like we say, we were talking at that point. At that point, Mary Sue's were in the air partly because Mary Sue's were in the air partly because of the whole fanfic, the whole Lord of the Rings fandom thing that was going on. And also, I just recently read Harry Potter.
That makes sense. It's the people on Twitter don't have the capability of reading most of the time.
At least not for any long form texts.
I'm not sure that Twitter existed. This was like 2004, 2005. Maybe Twitter existed. I don't think so. I think it was a little later.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was I going to say about
2006, so predated by only a year.
Yeah. So like it's 2004, 2005. And that was around the same time that there was I just recently read the books, and there was the hype for book 7, which turned out to be a disappointment. So I've got parodies of all the books except for book 7, but they're all pretty short. And a couple of them are longer, but most of them are. Even the longer ones are not long, are like couple of pages or a few pages. Let's see. Yeah.
Now I'm fascinated for these parodies that you have written.
Let's see. Book 4 and 5 has 2 parts. But they're not books; they're like chapters in this one because I've abbreviated them so much. It's pretty easy to abbreviate. It's oddly easy to abbreviate these novels.
Yeah, because they're fun fluff that don't really have much depth, but they're serviceable enough.
Yeah, they're definitely enjoyable,
Alrighty.
engaging.
all right. So has anybody else showed up?
So far, no.
Scheiße.
Go for it.
Okay, so as I said in the back room, this chapter over here isn't actually this is not a chapter. This is a scene I've decided to add in place of another one that was supposed to be in the chapter I was supposed to present today. So rather than reading what was originally there, I'd rather go ahead and give this one a shot and see how this works out. So, as anybody who has been following along may have picked up on, there is a running theme of Rosa being put through one horrific challenge after another and mounting pressure, constantly pressing down on her, trying to crush and break this character. And today is one more of such trial. However, this one is the nature of this one relates closer to what she's actually meant to be doing. So, without further ado, this is a tentative addition to Shattered Paradise, which is to be my chapter 12. It was dark. The skies were pitch black as smoke mixed in with the clouds. The distant thudding of guns echoed in the night, bright flashes of plasma and tracer rounds illuminating the underside of clouds, the turned up dirt, and the craters that littered the field as Lucia scurried through. Her blackened armor was matted down, and her boots hit the ground without a sound. The vents built into her helmet kept the screen from fogging beneath her frantic panting. She skid behind a barricade, one set up as part of a hostile machine gun nest, which had decimated her team before they could take it out. Lucia glanced back at them, the two remaining squad members, a sergeant and a corporal. She froze, spotting her fallen comrades in the distance, their bodies cold and unmoving. Her lower lip quivered and her eyes tensed. Then a roar ruptured in the air. Lucia peered over the barricade, spotting her objective. A Sky Reaper auto battery, a weapon system capable of of clearing the skies of aircraft and unmanned drones alike, even at hypersonic speeds, and sometimes even picking off fighters in low orbit. She gawked at it, watching its quad cannons firing in pairs, the shock waves rattling against her, with the helmet's sound dampeners working tirelessly to muffle the deafening roar. Luna! She shuddered, glancing back at her teammates, seeing the sergeant stare her down. The plan! Please tell me you have a plan. Lucia gazed at the faceless helmet of the Vanguard, her face turning pale. The the plan. That's right. We still have enough demo charges, yeah? We can still do this. She swallowed and smiled nervously. She peeked behind herself, seeing no clear path up the rocky hillside. Her mind was racked with a cocktail of emotions, pulling and tugging at each other. Don't kid yourself, Lucia. You don't have a plan. You've already got everybody killed. What what makes you think you can even pull this off? She shuddered, her eyes leaking as she glanced over the barrier and froze. A pair of IFVs were encroaching on their position, their blackened, jagged forms cruising through the treacherous terrain via tracks, their vicious, predatory turrets scanning the area. Her breath ran short, and Lucia felt her heart pound against her chest. Then she shrieked, pulled aside, and pressed against a barrier, the corporal scolding her. Lucia, listen, it's only a matter of time before they find us, she yelled through the comms. If you have any ideas on how to beat this thing, now's the time. Lucia bit her lower lip and nodded. She peered over the top, squinting and scanning the area. Her brows drew together, watching one of the IFVs stop moving. Lucia then her eyes shot open, realizing it too late. Shit! 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 She ducked behind the barrier just as the first anti-material round zipped past her. The IFVs had found them, their guns thudding as their back ramps lowered, disgorging the infantry. They're over there! The meatbags that took out the MJ! Blast them! Lucia gritted her teeth and held tight to her coiler, just as baleful red bolts flew past them. Her ear twitched, hearing the sergeant's chastise her. God fucking damn it, Lucia! Again? Seriously? The sergeant peeked over, taking pot shots at the enemy, almost immediately taking an anti-material round to the head. Lucia's heart stopped, watching his headless body fall to the ground with a thud. Her eyes tensed as she grimaced, vainly fighting back her tears. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. She heard groaning, and she saw the corporal's unmoving body collapse. Lucia curled up, pressing her hands against her head. I can't do this. I can't do it. I'm not. She repeated to herself, even as the Corvenra soldiers encroached on her. Lucia twitched, hearing the clattering of their armored talons as she uh, of their armored talons, and she snapped. Snatching her coiler, she stood up, turned around, and unloaded her firearm, screaming desperately until their rounds found their mark, with an anti-material round punching a hole through her chest. She stumbled back and dropped to her knees, seeing her ribs blown open, blood and viscera spilling out. Lucia tried to wheeze, but there wasn't anything good to breathe with anymore. Finally, she fell forward and blacked out. Red text flashed on the screen. Mission failed. Lucia caught her breath, still on her knees, holding herself up with her palms. She gritted her teeth and threw the helmet off, sweat dripping off her nose. The simulation chamber surrounding her was expansive, spherical, and gray, with at least 15 simulation pods at the edges of the platform. With a hiss, the doors of the spherical pods slid open, revealing each of her teammates and only leaving a pair of interlocking rings where the pod was. She flinched, hearing someone snarl. Her gaze darted to her side, seeing the sergeant rip off his helmet and storm to the center of the platform where Malik resided. That's it! I've had enough of this! He roared, boots clattering against the metallic surface. Every time, without fail, she just gets the squad killed! The captain, standing tall with his hands behind his back, held his ground. We all have a learning curve, Sergeant. Keep in mind, this is just a simulation, he snapped, throwing his arms in the air. We know, Malik, we all know. That's besides the point. Malik's gaze narrowed as the sergeant snarled. Lucia, eyes shot open and breathing erratically, watched the sergeant lean in to whisper to him. Listen, I get it. We all make mistakes. But twice, 3 times, 4, that's not her making a mistake anymore. This is a pattern. She is not qualified for this, and we all know it. Lucia felt her stomach curl, her eyes frantically darting around the room, seeing each of her teammates giving her the same look of disgust. Malik saw it too, and addressed the sergeant. I understand your frustration with her, but you must understand, we are not about to just boot her out. The Vanguard groaned and rolled his eyes. Why not? If that was any other soldier, anyone else, they'd be kicked out by now. Why is she getting special treatment? What? Is she doing favors for you, Malik? Is that it? Finally caved into some shari you digged up from a dirt pile? Malik's nostrils flared and his face reddened. Wasia has earned her place here as much as anyone else. She has passed every hurdle we threw at her with less time to prepare than anyone here, he roared, his voice booming and powerful like a lion, startling everyone in the room. The sergeant stood there, shuddering. Malik stared him down, his gaze fierce and deathly. And you should know better than anyone else that I do not take kindly to slander or insubordination. Lucia's eyes darted across the chamber, seeing the same startled look on the other veterans, the men and women who volunteered to help her with her training. Then, finally, the sergeant relented with an exhale. Sir, yes, sir. Dismissed, Malik growled, and the other veterans left the chamber, with their shoes clanking against a metallic floor, leaving a shivering Lucia alone with him. The captain pinched the bridge of his nose, his forehead wrinkled as he sighed. Lucia hung her head, her thoughts turning to white noise, even as Malik approached her. Finally, he lowered himself, dropping down to one knee. Lucia, are you all right? She blushed, his tones softening so drastically, so suddenly. Trembling, Lucia sat down. She peered into his eyes and wept. It's like what the man said. I I got them all killed. The captain exhaled. I know what he said, Lucia, but I'm asking you. Lucia grimaced, her team's mangled bodies flashing through her mind, and she shook her head. I couldn't do it. I failed them. I I saw them die because of me. She slipped a hand in her hair, seeing the obsidian soldiers flicker over the Corvenra infantry, the image of the maimed Maria flickering and overlapping with her fallen comrades. I I can't take it anymore. I'm not meant for this, she snapped, hysterical, tears streaming down her face. Malik took a deep breath and answered back. Okay, he muttered, looking her in the eyes. I'm sorry, Wiz. We've been putting a lot of pressure on you. I get that she mashed her teeth, then barked. No, you're not. Putting pressure on me is all you've ever done, ever since you pulled me out of there. And now I'm asking you to take a break. She twitched, her face reddening, seeing Malik's somber expression. I'm going to request that we give you a break. Once you're ready, we'll pick off where we left off. Lucia's eyes widened, her heart slowing as warmth rushed through her. Malik patted her on the shoulder and dismissed her. Go ahead. We'll discuss the details later. Just go relax. Lucia nodded and did as he asked, stopping at the door and looking back on him. Thank you, Malik, she whispered. Take care, Lucia. And stop. Whew. Any thoughts?
I visualized everything and it's flowed smoothly. I enjoyed it.
Oh my god. Thank you.
Although perhaps Dunn will be able to say more about it because I'm not exactly the most how would you say, the most accurate in, yeah, just as he says over there.
Yeah, for me, the weird thing about it was the ruptured in air. That's usually not how you use the word.
Wouldn't it be through instead?
I think it would be cracked the air.
Or
Because
you would say ruptured the air just without the pronoun preposition. Ruptured the air.
Yeah, I think ruptured the air is better because ruptured is a very specific. I actually had to look it up. Odd. So it just means, especially of a pipe, a vessel, or a bodily part, such as an organ or membrane burst or break or burst suddenly.
I've been using it in reference to a sudden explosion of sound, but I suppose that I could alter a few things.
I don't know. I mean, it might be okay. Ruptured the air might be okay.
I think that ruptured in, it's like broke in the air. It kind of sounds a bit odd, but I think like if you just remove some of the like remove a couple words, just ruptured the air or ruptured in the air.
Yeah, it does seem like usage and style are a bit better than usual. There's still a few awkward places where descriptions of people doing weird things with their faces and stuff, but it seems like it's better.
Okay.
The delivery was pretty good too.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, delivery aside, and some nitpicking in regard towards facial corrections aside, that will of course be ironed out as I have time to refine this one. Content-wise, the actual material and events that was portrayed here.
I'm
I
assuming that
the way I pictured it was a bunch of gruff men who were falling over in slow motion.
Okay.
But otherwise, well, actually, that made absolutely no sense what I just said. The content I would say was interesting. I thought the dialogue was smooth, not exactly terrible. Um, uh, 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 I I should probably stop talking because I'm talking complete nonsense at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, this is a newly drafted segment that is meant to replace another segment in the story already. So,
it's meant to be a tad confusing, if I understand correctly. It's a lot of confusion, fog of
I'm
war
sorry.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
I really enjoyed the dialogue between the sergeant and this Malik. And I also think you really did a good job at showcasing how Malik has a soft, tender spot for this Lucia lady.
okay. Um, any thoughts on the plot or characterization? Since we're on the subject of characters.
Oh,
Um, I think I don't know if I quite have all the context I need yet. Like, when exactly is this in the timeline?
This takes place.
Is this a significantly after what you've read in the redrafted stuff, or is this like
Um,
directly after? Because I get the sense that a lot has happened that
it's a
we've not been
fair bit
privy
after.
to. That okay, okay.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
kind of getting the sense that there's a lot of stuff that's happened that we have not been privy to yet that will inform a lot, but we don't have that right now.
what was the acronym IMV something or other?
IFV, Infantry Fighting Vehicle.
Oh,
I
okay.
lifted that from real world military jargon.
Okay.
Fair enough. I just didn't know what it
Basically,
meant.
basically think of the Bradley, a tank that's not a tank that's also supposed to be an infantry transport, but can only transport like 6 guys. Something like that.
Okay, maybe something Jeepish.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I could probably done if you could like look up the Bradley IFV. You could probably just put it on screen and everybody could see what exactly this sort of thing looks like.
Yeah, it looks like it looks like a tank.
Well,
It's
yeah,
just
it's like
a tank. It's just a
it's a
tank. That's all it
yeah,
is.
it's a half house between an armored personnel carrier and a tank. So
Okay, yeah, it does look tank-esque. Is this a simulation that she was in?
yes, it was a
Yeah.
simulation. I figured I would go with a cold opening, and after everything falls apart, I just simply reveal, oh, by the way, this was a simulation. Don't worry, the main protagonist is still alive. However, there are psychological consequences, because I know that this character is not going to be getting, killed with, at least not easily, because of her regeneration and insane durability. So I figured I would focus on psychological consequences instead.
Yeah, if she got killed, it would be odd, her being the protagonist. I mean, I guess that does happen. But
Yeah.
Driving her mad would be a pretty interesting way of doing things. I don't
I mean,
think that's how often do you see stories handle such an aspect? where instead of physical trauma, it's mental trauma.
Yeah. I mean, I figured that would be the correct angle to go for over here, and besides, it'll be an interesting way to develop stakes, I guess. Let's see. So this was too drastic of a jump from her passing the officer entrance exam to just jumping over to a simulation from like a few weeks into the future.
Yeah, I would definitely say that this is a little bit jarring.
All right. I'll go ahead and make note of that and see if I can find a way to more easily transition the ending of the previous chapter into this one. Perhaps maybe discuss the fact that she will have to start going through simulations or be assigned to a team or something like that.
Mm-hmm. That sounds
Okay,
like a good idea.
yeah,
Yeah, it
perhaps,
probably wouldn't take that much. Just a
yeah,
little bit of to create the context.
yeah. I figured that discussing the next step in her training in the previous chapter before we see it would provide a smoother transition to the next step. All right. Well, thank you very much for your feedback, everyone.
I hope my feedback wasn't so horrible.
Don't mention it. I couldn't possibly, not in the least. I wouldn't dream of it.
Don't worry. You're fine.
I appreciate it.
All right. Anyone else?
All right, I believe that it is Kareem's turn.
Okay, so what I have today is something I decided to work on from basically my initial writing. I thought I should probably expand a bit more on the characters and their uh, beginnings, basically give them a bit of a prequel to hopefully flesh them out a bit further in the world that they are inhabiting in. So, without further ado, I'm going to now read what I have so far, and I hope you enjoy. The line stretched out far to the entrance to the city. Caravans and wagons, adventurers and wayfarers, sprinkled in between, all waited as the gates remained manned by the city guards' gatekeepers, stopping each newcomer and inspecting whatever it is they have on their person. The purpose to such an inspection was given plainly to those subjected to it. Newcomers are inspected for contraband or any ties to the Hydra's vanguards, would be the reason given to the confused and annoyed travelers and merchants seeking passage into the city. Gorasphere, also a city that goes by many names around the region of Gahar, the city of Thebes being the most popular, is known by many to be governed by 5 houses that hold dominion over their own districts. It is also a city that had been infested by a coalition of gangs that formed under the banner calling themselves the Hydra's Vanguard, causing the houses to band together in response, forming the Midnight Watchers to serve as the town's guard. Those who would seek entry, or even those residing behind the city walls, would claim to see no difference between the criminals hiding in the dark and those who would keep the peace. They come from mercenary backgrounds, sellswords, and thugs, ending up forming the bulk of the Watchers' garrison. As merchants and weary travelers hoped to go past the open gates, they would find themselves subjected to their belongings ransacked, possessions taken away under the name of a tax. The most unlucky ones would even be dragged away to who knows where, if found to be carrying whatever they would be considered to whatever would consider it to be contraband. The line seeking entry thinned out, many opting to leave and find respite in business opportunities elsewhere. Eventually, the guards called for the next man to come forward, wherein they landed upon a rather peculiar man in their eyes, wearing nothing more than a plain white shirt with a leather tunic serving as protection, red leather trousers, and travel-worn boots, carrying with him nothing more than a sack strapped to his back. "State your name," demanded the guard, while another approached to inspect the man's belongings. "Aaron. Aaron Hobbs," replied the man as he held his breath, while the guard patted over him, then tearing the sack from him and rummaging through it as if looking for something. "A rather unusual name," remarked the guard, asking the questions, to which Aaron responded plainly. "Can't really choose our names, can we?" before giving the guard a smile, only for him to let out an unimpressed snort as he continued the line of questions. "What is your purpose for coming to Gorosphere?" he asked in a bored tone. "A business venture. How long will these questions last?" Aaron retorted, only for the guard inspecting his belongings to pipe up angrily. "Stop your yammering," he growled as he shoved the sack into Aaron's hands, nearly pushing him to the ground. "Hey now, I've been waiting for hours to get through," complained Aaron as he regained his composure. The guard stared at him, as if contemplating on whether or not to declare that he has contraband with his possession and to throw him off the city walls themselves. They stared at each other for what seemed like a minute before the question-asking guard waves his hand, gesturing that he can pass through. "Just get out of our sight before... Just get out of our sight and don't cause problems," he said, as he called for the person behind Aaron to come forward, a caravan driver whose horse would trample him if he did not hurry along forward. Aaron jogged a few yards before coming to a halt to look around his surroundings. He smiled as he looked at the buildings around him. While some did show sign of age upon their exteriors, he noted how the district looked well maintained, building reaching high, and shops dotting around the square. He considered his options as to where he should go. Where should he stay? In the distance, he could see a waypoint marker, a distinct carved statue leaning against a stone wall, with a board stuck to it. He walked up to it and on closer inspection, saw that it is a map, giving rough directions to points of interest and to the other districts around the city. The planks on the board showed signs of chipping away, but he could discern that not too far from where he was, there was a boarding house. No, but he could discern that not too far from where he was, he could find a boarding house. He looked around himself, trying to get a feel for the land, then walked off towards the direction that his intuition pointed as the correct path. After some minutes of searching and walking, he had found himself lost with no discernible landmark that he could remember from looking at a board map. He did, however, find himself standing before an apothecary house, and standing in front of it was a short, filthy-looking creature. It wore a makeshift apron, and a burlap sack formed into a pair of pants, and it stood sweeping the porch with a tiny broom. He was not sure what to make of this sighting, but he decided that he would approach it cautiously, so as to not frighten it. Hello, little fella," Aaron began, to which the creature jumped with a yelp, dropping its broom and stared up at him. "What? Who? Do you want something, human?" It began with a flurry of words, giving Aaron pause as to how to respond. "I am lost, I think. Could you help me? he continued slowly, trying to find the correct words in order to speak to whatever it is that he's now to speak to whatever it is that is now cowering in fear on the steps. Eventually, the creature relaxed itself, letting out a cough as it spoke with more confidence than before. Ah, yes, help you I can, it began, performing something of an elaborate bow. Zazix I am, goblin assistant to master of this house. You say you are lost? Tell me, where do you wish to go in the city? Well, Zazix, I'm looking for a boarding house that's supposed to be somewhere around this corner of the district, but I've been walking around and I can't seem to find it. Did I go in the right direction? Replied Aaron, looking around once again, trying to remember any distinct landmarks that would correlate with the board. It is then that Zazix interrupted his train of thought. Boarding house. Why yes, boarding house. Further down north from here. Big triangular shaped house, bathed in light. Not far walk from here, he exclaimed. He exclaimed excitedly. North from here, big triangle building. Right, thanks, Eric said plainly, looking around and walking off, leaving the goblin to return to his duties. He followed the goblin's instructions and eventually he found it the boarding house. At least he assumed he did, as it was a large house that was quite not triangular, nor was it bathed in light. It did have a roof that ended in a triangle, and only part of it was lit up was the main and only part of it that was lit up was the main entrance with a torch outside and the light shining through the windows by the doorway. He took a deep breath and stepped forth, opening the door and letting himself in. Inside, he could find a rather unremarkable entrance hall. On the far end was a counter, where he could see an elderly man sitting, unmoving, possibly taking a nap, and behind him was a door that was closed, likely where the man lived. From where he is standing, he could also see a flight of stairs to the right, presumably leading to where the rooms are. He walked forward, looking at his surroundings, taking a peek through an open doorway to find nothing more than a supply closet. He found himself standing by the counter, looking at the old man, leaning back on his chair, snoring loudly as he muttered under his breath. Aaron looked around and considered sneaking past the old man and just find himself an empty room to stay in. As if reading his mind, the old man bolted awake and stood up, groaning loudly as he did, causing Aaron to jump in fright. "Handmaiden's mercy!" he exclaimed, looking at the old man with wild eyes. "You don't need to scare me out of this building yet, old man." What do you want, vagabond?" questioned the old man, rubbing his ears as he blinked rapidly, adjusting to his surroundings. I'd like a room to stay in, please," Aaron replied, trying to force a smile through the awkward situation he feels in. "A room? Sorry, we have no rooms open," replied the man as he sat back down, preparing himself to fall back asleep. Aaron looked at him both surprised and annoyed. He was about to leave when his eyes caught a rack behind the man. On the rack he could see bolts, and on the bolts rested a key, with some bolts being absent of such. "What's with that rack, old man?" he asked, pointing at it. The old man rubbed his eyes and turned around, looking at whatever Aaron pointed at. "Oh, those are keys to the rooms. But like I said, no vacancies right now," he repeated, closing his eyes, trying to pretend that Aaron was no longer there. Aaron began to feel properly annoyed with the old man and decided to take matters to his own hands instead. He stood and waited until he could hear the man snoring again, to which he then quietly crept his way for the stairs, and taking each careful step so as to avoid making any creaks. Eventually, he reached the top of the stairs. Looking back, he reached the top of the stairs. Looking back, he felt relieved to see that the old man was not behind him. Looking forward, he could see that a narrow hallway laid before him, with doors on each side, leading to what he assumed were the boarding rooms. He continued his cautious pace as he looked at each door, remembering the ones that had remembering the ones that had a key remaining downstairs. Um, I'm a very bad speaker. Remembering the ones that had a key remaining downstairs, thus turning his attention to those. He tried some of the handles, seeing if they would open, listening in if there were any sounds to be heard within. He picked one door and crouched down, facing the keyhole. He put down his sack and reached inside, rummaging around until he found his set of locksmith's tools, to which he then began his work on picking through the lock. He moved the utensils around carefully, keeping an eye out for the old man, until he could cautious pace as he looked at each door. That is what I meant earlier. Keeping an eye out for the old man until he could hear that ever satisfying click and the door slowly opening by itself. He put his tools away and took a peek inside, finding the room to be vacant with no sign that anyone had been staying inside. He looked back down the hall and slipped inside, where he could comfortably put his sack down and throw himself on the bed. Aaron let out a delighted chuckle as he looked around the room. Unremarkable as he might expect for a boarding house, a plain room with nothing but an uncomfortable bed and a small table and stool. This place will have to do for now, he thought to himself, before proceeding to think about all the opportunities he could find to make his name known, fantasizing about working with the Hydra's vanguard as a renowned locksmith, breaking into the manors of the 5 houses noblemen. Wait, 5? Yeah. Okay, where was I? Breaking into the manors of the 5 houses noblemen, perhaps finding a lovely woman that he could marry and have her rule beside him. As he fantasized about all of this, he could feel his eyes closing and he drifted off to sleep, his journey finally taking its toll on him. How much time do I have left?
As much as necessary.
Okay, well, that's I have read the first day of the adventure. There is a bit more, but I could leave it at that.
Okay. Do as you wish.
What are your thoughts on my poorly read through tale?
Well, I could actually follow along with the events as going on. For the most part, is this guy who's showing up to what I presume is a fantasy-style town, as evidenced by, well, the presence of goblins for a start. Um, as for, hmm,
As far as the story goes, I don't really know what the tension or conflict is, and I don't know if I necessarily
yeah,
have a good grasp of the main character.
yeah. I frankly don't exactly know what exactly is the story over here.
I mean,
Whoa, what was
Valerian,
that?
what's that?
it seems like at the moment he's. It seems like for this chapter the tension was he going to find a place or not?
Yeah, that
But then presumably there's something for the story as a whole. There's an overriding conflict.
Hmm.
And yeah, I agree with Codex James Nutton. It was fine. Don't beat yourself up about it. You're fine.
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, take it from me, somebody who's been the punching bag for a while over here. Eventually things get better.
well,
It doesn't ever stop, but it does get better.
I think that might be partly the accent. The accent might be partly something you can't really do anything about that.
I do also have a bit of a speech impairment that may also um, contribute to a bit of the very poor reading.
It wasn't that poor.
Well,
it
Yeah, and
wasn't that
besides,
bad.
it's nothing you can't overcome.
Yeah,
There were
true.
just a few times where I was just like, what's he saying? But it's
Yeah, but I do have a bunch of videos on my channel. If you were to watch them, you'd probably see the full scope of my speaking speaking style.
So I noticed a few weird things in usage. Replied holding his breath. I mean, if he's holding his breath, he wouldn't be able to reply.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, maybe I was thinking of it as he would reply first and then hold his breath. Maybe I
then
could
you
actually.
should you should you should change that to reflect that, because as it is, it seems like they're happening simultaneously rather than sequentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
Also,
something I do sometimes too. He said, "Well, taking a sip of so and so, all right." He can't. It's kind of hard to talk while you're taking a sip of whatever it is, you know. So I'll do things like that
well, maybe it's not too hard, but you will probably end up spitting a lot of water.
and choking. Yes.
But to also address the concern or the feedback on what would be the conflict. Well, this is just the start of it. I do have planned out a whole chain of events that would hopefully lead to an exciting heist with some
Yeah.
other characters that would then also lead to a twist with a betrayal and then a monologue that ends with him more or less starting at the very bottom again.
Put some hints of a future story in the first
I would
chapter,
agree.
like that, to intrigue people, to get people intrigued and say, "Oh, wow, I wonder what that is." And then it turns out to be connected to the main story, but they don't know right off what it's going to be about.
yeah.
Hmm.
So just the classic writing tool of having a hook at the beginning of the story to build intrigue, so that way you can retain the audience's attention, and even sprinkle in some hints or some foreshadowing here and there to keep the intrigue going as they trudge through it. I don't want to say trudge through because that implies that it's work to read through this, but you know,
Make the way through
I'm
it.
used to using deprecating language, particularly in relation to my own stuff. So there you go.
Don't
Yeah,
worry.
there's also a flurry of words implies a lot of words, but there weren't actually that many words.
Maybe I just thought it as the goblin speaking in a quick succession. Maybe I should actually replace it to a quick succession instead of a flurry.
Possibly. Other
Yeah.
thing that you can do is, like Brandon Sanderson talks about, your first chapter is your promise to your reader of what you're going to be giving them for the rest of the book. And I don't really know what the promises being made in this first chapter are, per se.
I mean, is that something about breaking into the houses of the five nobles, or whatever, noble houses?
Yeah, he was fantasizing about all of the exciting things that he hopes to achieve in the city, becoming a grand locksmith, which is basically a lockpick in this sense.
I think you probably might want to change that, because
Oh.
locksmith I don't think the locksmith would work. Or I think lockmaster, finger artist, lockpick, master thief, something like that. But locksmith, that has very specific connotations that you're not going to be able to overcome.
It implies he makes locks or fixes locks.
So yeah, I would advise not using locksmith as the term.
Okay. Well, this is just the first draft from a notebook that I've been writing during work, so I do have plenty of things to go to iron out through all of this. Definitely. But I do think the foundation is solid enough.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that foundation is solid. It just needs some refinement. I think just working on the character work will be a big point. I think that will help, since I'm not sure I get a good grasp of the character or yet. I get that he's kind of a dreamer, but I don't really know anything else about him.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he's meant to be a bit of a mystery man, though. Maybe that's part of the whole thing.
Well, it's very difficult to have a mystery man character when you're in his POV.
There is that.
It's the Melisandre principle. George didn't.
Yeah, you can't do it for very long.
Yeah, George didn't put you in Melisandre's head for quite a while in A Song of Ice and Fire. You get so. Same thing with.
Sorry.
Same. Oh, go for it. Sorry.
I was just saying, hello there, Axula.
Okay.
Greetings, Axula.
You had something to say, Perion, I think?
Just that I'm going to take your notes into consideration, and I will hopefully be able to make a more compelling beginning, while also ironing out the rest of the notes that I've been working on.
Cool.
Sweet.
And I appreciate your feedback, as always.
Don't mention
My
it.
pleasure.
We couldn't possibly.
You are all very kind.
Not in the least. I wouldn't dream of it.
Especially.
Oh,
not.
hey, Axela, what's up?
So
Well, I like to see the best in people.
I like to see the best in people that I know.
Also,
Is there
hi,
any-
Trip.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Trip. I said hi. Hi, Trip. Glad that you're playing more of our little addiction.
What?
Now,
Yu-Gi-Oh! I got her addicted to Yu-Gi-Oh!
and I'm addicted to Dark Tide, which is, by the way, a very fun game, but does certainly have some issues that needs to be ironed out.
Mm.
My favorite game is a game of Dark Souls where that commander Dunn is playing when it says you died every couple of minutes.
That's. Do you have any idea how very. Wait, how does that mean go? Do you have any idea how very unspecific? Is that how it goes? Well, anyway, that glowing skeleton guy says not very specific.
No, just that when it says you died.
It's not very specific.
Well, no, Valerian reads books. He doesn't play video games.
Yeah, I'm just talking about when Brightlord is playing a game and it says you died because I'm a meanie.
You're passe.
I know books are passe. Wouldn't it be a riot if this wasn't really a
No,
writer's club?
No, I didn't. I said that in response to you being a meanie, I'm saying no, you're not a meanie. You're passe.
Oh. Wouldn't it be a riot if instead of this being a writers club, writers was actually an acronym for wow, reading is total excrement, really sucks. We were actually an anti-reading group.
Well,
That'd be,
I'm anti-reading most of modern literature because a lot of it's terrible.
Well,
Certainly.
I don't really read much modern literature apart from fantasy anyway.
Even the friggin' books suck nowadays.
I would say a lot of them do. Daniel Green's book is terrible. Let's see, what else is bad? A lot of traditionally published works are really lame and lazy.
Huh. That's unfortunate. You'd think that literary works would be a bastion of quality material given, well, the costs of producing all this stuff and the fact that, of course, there isn't any flashing lights or special effects to distract the audience from how mid everything is.
It's the realistic novels have been kind of boring for a while, from my point of view, at least.
From my point of view, the book industry's boring.
Yikes.
From my point of view, I really need to read more books.
Yeah.
In fact, I do have the trilogy of the Lord of the Rings and one of Sanderson's books, which
Very nice.
yeah, and I've read a bit of I read a bit of that book, and I'm reading Fellowship of the Ring, and I believe I got a few ideas on how to structure my story a bit less haphazardly.
Cool.
I don't know if you remember the first time I was reading my my drafts, but I think there may be a slight improvement to my writing style from then.
Okay.
At least that's what my girlfriend said when she was reading whatever I was writing.
Oh, that's adorable. I love it.
This is such a moment in the story.
Hmm.
I
Well,
know.
On a not so wholesome note,
Uh-oh.
I found a tweet like yesterday of somebody trying not really defend The Last of Us 2, but more so to bash on Joel as a character by saying that he killed an innocent doctor to prevent a potentially saving mankind. Then knowing she would have wanted to lie to Ellie about it, all because he never got closure and was a selfish person. He got what he deserved, and I instantly loved Abby for it.
What?
To which I simply replied, because performing a life-threatening surgery on an unconscious and non-consenting minor is so much better, right? And of course, let's not forget that there's a humanity left to save. 20 years since it's been the apocalypse, and you couldn't even mass-produce the cure anyway.
Yeah, so most of us do not know what. I am only vague tangentially aware of The Last of Us 2. I didn't even know the first one was a thing until the second one was going to come out.
Yikes. Well, anyway, you dodged a bullet.
Yeah, I was just like, I had never even heard. I had heard of The Last of Us when they were announced a TV show on HBO, and then I heard the game was second game, and I'm just like, zombie apocalypse, not terribly interested. And I was just like, and then even before that, the leaks were saying they would be bad. So I'm just like, not interested.
There's a few highlight reels on YouTube of Mahler's playthrough through both of the games. Feel free to check that out if you want. It's a pretty nice condensed version of what I had to suffer through having to actually watch the live streams.
Fair enough.
The only thing I remember from The Last of Us Part 2 is a scene of Abby beating up Ellie with Senator Armstrong's voiceover, replacing Abby's grunting.
You know, that actually works for some reason. I don't know why.
Senator Armstrong works with everything.
Yeah.
What were you saying, Valerian?
All I was saying was The Last of Us are 4 words.
Well, I don't really care whether it's dark or depressing. I listen to Joe Abercrombie novels, and Joe Abercrombie, the first book, the first trilogy, ends with a magical nuclear explosion causing at least a couple of the main characters to die of magic cancer.
Magic cancer, not very pleasant.
Yeah. The story does continue in the three standalone books before going into the third trilogy. But even that one ends on a rather depressing note of a marriage falling apart very rapidly.
Spoiler, but what is the last word in the novel?
No idea. I don't care.
Bother.
I just care what the last scene is.
Bother.
The last scene of the novel is a very good setup for later books, which I hope are written. But if there's no more books in the First Law universe, I'm gonna be okay with it. The ending that Joe Abercrombie left us with, because it's pretty dang solid. It might even be his best book so far.
I would also just like to agree with Axula when he says, "Nanomachine, son." And that yes, Armstrong is indeed peak beta. Not peak.
Peak alpha male. Peak Giga Chad. Also, I am so proud to have played the ever-living shit out of Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, and I actually based elements of my story off of it way before it became a meme and shot up into friggin' godhood on the internet as far as memes are concerned.
Yes. Honestly, that game was so... It deserves a lot more. It deserves more than it actually got.
Well,
make the sequel, Platinum Games. Make it already.
Just not just not as a Switch exclusive, please. I'd actually like to play it sometime in my life.
Well, so I believe that we filibuster for long enough, waiting for anybody else who wants to come on to come on. I think it's my
I
turn. Or okay, you had something to say?
I just wanted to say that it's 11:30 for me, and I need to wake up in about 5 hours. So I'm gonna have
Yeah,
to go
go.
now.
Yeah, go for it. Totally. If you need to go, go.
Okay.
Nice well.
I had a lot of fun. I hope you all have a pleasant day or evening, and may we see each other again sometime.
Yep.
Yeah,
So,
unless they're Doom Eternal.
Huh?
so long.
Oh yeah.
Doom Eternal is pretty much
There's-
perfect. Eternal's pretty much
Yeah.
perfect. There's nothing wrong with it.
I mean, there's some bugs here and there, but in every single category, the game is an upgrade. The only thing I could think to complain about is, oh, we lost Snap Map, and oh, the multiplayer. I'm like, yeah, the multiplayer isn't as great as it was in 2016. Yeah, sure, we lost Snap Map, but we also got the master levels and friggin' horde mode. Also, the DLCs are goated. I don't care what anybody says about the Devoth boss fight. That was awesome. I know, but still, for what it was pretty gosh darn good.
Yeah, the main bug that I hate is in Ancient Gods Part 2 in the first level.
Really? Which bug was it?
You know how I've had a few times where I go or I've had to fix it, but I can't do it in Ultra Nightmare, where when you're going through the first gate with the wolf,
Yeah.
the wolf freezes and doesn't move, and you're stuck there.
Oh. Okay, that's interesting. I've never encountered that before.
I've encountered that at least 6 times at this point,
All
and
right.
I always have to load my last checkpoint and then shoot my assault rifle into the air until I hit it, turning my vertical sinking on.
Interesting. Maybe we should check that out together at some point.
Yeah, I don't know why that is such a annoying consistent problem, and apparently it's so consistent that somebody actually created a YouTube video explaining how to get around it. But apparently it's impossible in Ultra Nightmare. So
Oh.
if you want, yeah, it's annoying. Okay, so I'm on chapter 3 of the second Dragonstrife. So far, Shard Dragonless has arrived at the capital, and as a result of the current Dragonlord dying, he's planning on creating a power block to allow for him to take greater power in the kingdom, even if he doesn't want to be king indirectly. He wants to control things behind the scenes because he sees the throne as too dangerous to use. And while this is happening, the prince's wife is trying to broker deals to make sure that her husband gets elected as the next Dragonlord, due to the fact that there's 3 children and there's a pair of twins and one person who's the daughter of the previous prince, who it may be illegitimate, but she's still has a slightly better claim
All right. So
than
this
her
was
older siblings.
So question, this was what you presented last week and the week before?
Yep, that's correct.
All right. Awesome.
Yep. Chapter 3, The Novice and the Master. Amelisa! Shelia smiled and sat down across from the pretty silver-haired woman, doing her best to appear as warm and welcoming as possible. It's so good to see you. The younger woman folded her hands in her lap and tilted her head. So, I imagine that all this buttering up is something to do with some kind of deal? Amelisa settled back in her chair and crossed her legs, idly tapping her index finger on the back of the opposite hand. What exactly do you want to talk about? Ah, straight to the point. Very nice. She interlaced her fingers, assuming a more businesslike posture, since it was more likely to put her at ease. Well, what I am asking for is that you accept the offer of marriage that I am offering you. Amelisa raised her eyebrows. Ah, I see. Why? She breathed out slowly. It would be sort of nice to be a princess, I have to say, but there is the issue that I'm a second wife, that I'd be a second wife. Yes, it is a rather tricky element of this situation, Chile admitted. But I do think that it can be worked out. I know that Ulbar is not the most sophisticated place. Amelisa adjusted her skirts so that they were more comfortable. But I can see how things are shaping up now that Dragonlord Hera is dying. I'm willing to give my support to Bale without any bartering or that sort of thing. It's more because of me, Shelley admitted. I haven't told anyone about this, but I had 2 miscarriages last year. My age is making any pregnancy become hazardous. Ah, I see. You want more Dragonlords so that you can bond some of the dragons wandering around Vagar's spine. Amelisa nodded. Well, if you want, I suppose I could agree to it. Excellent. Shelia took her friend's hands and smiled. Now all I have to do is convince Bale, she thought. A few minutes later, she walked into their daughter's room where Bale was sitting with the girls on the floor. Eurydice and Persephone were playing at Parcenzi with their father, their goal to get the animal-shaped pieces across on a winding interconnected route on a specially made board. Embarrassing your father, girls. Shelia grinned and sat down next to Persephone so she could grab her and start smothering her in kisses. The little silver-haired girl grinned and accepted the affection without complaint, which was more than could be said of her sister when Shelia pulled her in. Stop it, Mom! Eurydice started trying to bat her away, which just made Shelia resort to tickling her. Giggling uncontrollably, Eurydice struggled weakly against her, but it was to no avail. Finally satisfied, Shelia kissed her little girl on the head and released her. So, how close are you to winning? Just a couple more rolls, Bale shrugged. They've been ahead of me all game. Might as well put me out of my misery. Yep, Eurydice said smugly as she took the dice and rolled them. Her little elephant piece passed by her father's lion and her sister's dove to the end. I win, she grinned and leaned back in her seat on the floor. You're the luckiest girl in this whole kingdom. Bale shook his head. A perfect roll every time. Maybe you're just bad at this game, Father. Persephone patted his hand comfortably. It's all right. Not everybody can be good at this game. No, I suppose not. Bale shook his head. Girls, can you give your father and me a few moments alone? Sure, the girls said in unison, and then left the room. Bale took a deep breath and rested his hands on his knees. Can I hazard an assumption about the nature of this conversation? He asked, absently tapping on his kneecaps with his fingers. Chewing her lip, she just looked into Bale's eyes, then took his hands in a light grip. Bale just looked at her, eyes open and trusting as ever. He knew her well enough to be aware of what she was doing, especially since they'd discussed it before. It's her, isn't it? Bale asked. Yes. I already talked with Amelisa, and she is willing, so if you are... Shelia trailed off. Bale took a deep breath and nodded slowly. It's somewhat thing of a touchy subject, but since we are likely in need of more dragon riders, and since it wasn't me who put it forward, he chewed his lip. You are serious, I suppose, he continued, clearly trying to clear his mind through talking. Well, I imagine that you know best. You're more experienced than me and a bit more worldly. That didn't stop you from vehemently arguing with me on this very topic a while back, Shalia said calmly. I was being an idiot, like I often am when someone tries to pressure me into doing something that might seem to be unpleasant at the time. Belle swallowed and squeezed her hands. I love you, Shalia. He took a deep breath. I want you to know how much I really care about you, and how much I don't want to ever make you feel like you're replaceable. I know. Shalia smiled and gave him a hug. I love you too, and this won't change that. I'm glad, he swallowed. The preparations for the council took a few days, and during that time, Shard laid the groundwork as best he could. He didn't line up the meetings all at once. Instead, he carefully paced them out so that the ones that required more or convincing were closer to his arrival, while the ones he believed would be easier would be left for later. From his tally, there were only a few firm votes. Chimera had his vote, Sitharis would be easy to move, and Ulbar was likely for bail, seeing as Amalisa was being courted by Shalia. That left Harag, Parthia, Rune, and Numenor. What they needed was a majority of 4 in order to win. So if they had 2 of those 4, then the election would be certain. Rune was a rather fickle prospect, since Natriana was historically unreliable. What she wanted was not exactly clear at any given moment, other than her own debauchery. Harag was extremely wealthy due to being the trade connection between North and South, so bargaining with them was likely to take more out of him than them. That left Parthia and Numenor. For that reason, Neftiri and her brother were first. Rubbing his fingers together, Shard walked through the garden in the west side of the palace, ostensibly known as Vagar's Garden due to the black flowers arranged in flower beds that formed a dragon head. Such power wasted. One mutually destructive battle had destroyed 2 of the greatest dragons of Aemon's unification. Shard shook his head and then ran his gloved fingers over the black flowers. An interesting choice of meeting places, Lord Shard, Queen Neftiri remarked as she walked into the garden, accompanied by her younger brother and bodyguard Farak. Both had the jet black skin of their people, quite different from their more olive-skinned neighbors in Harag. Their bright clothing had a slight metallic sheen due to being woven from Yusipa strands so thin that the naked eye couldn't see, and their braided hair was nearly identically styled. Shard wore his standard long black coat with silver embroidery with a dark undershirt, mostly because he found that bright colors were distinctly unflattering on him. The Parthians' bright colors suited their dark skin and contrasted nicely, but if they did wear black clothing, it would still look striking. Color was a sign of high wealth, though, and Parthian pride was something that would not allow them to appear less than the pale-skinned northerners. Shard graciously bowed, hand over his heart, and smiled. It is good to see you, your highness. He gestured for them to walk with him, and as he'd expected, they strode up beside him as he made his way through the flower beds. How is Parthia doing this time of year? Neftiri raised her midnight eyebrows. You do realize that I am only going to give that bland question the banal response it deserves, she said bluntly. Let's not play word games here, Shard. I am intrigued as to the state of affairs in Parthia. Shard gave her a disarming grin. What products are in most demand, and down there is likely money in my coffers, he shrugged. I'm willing to make deals for exclusive trade rights. How deft of you. Nefteri raised her left hand and rested her elbow on the opposite palm. So, what is it you actually want? My lady, I am looking to forge new bonds between our disparate kingdoms. Shard mimicked her posture, though he let his fingers curl slightly. I want to go into business with you. Me and Princess Irene are working on a canal that will bring higher amounts of fresh water to your kingdom, as well as immense amounts of trade. Ah, Nefteri smiled slightly. Well then, now you have my attention. We want to lighten the load as much as possible, especially between those who will benefit from the project. Shard pulled out a copy of the plans for the canal and handed it over to Nefteri. This is the plan. We build multiple canals as well as construct a specially built locking mechanism that will be useful in terms of bringing boat traffic up and down the waterway. Nefteri handed the blueprint over to Farrak, who examined the paper with a critical expression. This is a very good plan, Farrak nodded approvingly. It's clear that whoever designed this put a lot of effort into it. Nefteri's eyes narrowed slightly, clearly interested. Well, this is something that I can get behind. She placed her fingertips on her chin. Let's discuss it, shall we? The haggling took a couple hours, but by the time it was done, Shard had obtained a deal that secured their support in the vote, partial coverage of the Great Canal, and a mutually beneficial tariff agreement. Harag went similarly, since their desert home was almost as arid as Parthia. A canal benefited them just as Parthia, and Lord Dandris accepted his terms without much difficulty. The last person that Shard had planned to meet with was Liliana, the Sitharis governor, Prince Carleon's daughter, mostly due to the fact that he knew how much financial difficulty she was in. However, it didn't quite work out as planned, and he couldn't meet up with Liliana until after the planned day of the vote, due to someone else getting her appointment. Shard assumed that it was either Shalia or Bale, but that was just an assumption. However, a few of the smaller lords were able to meet with him and discuss the possibility of the vote. Most of them didn't particularly like Chimera, since she was a blunt instrument who seemed focused on war, but once he intimated that she would have laxer tax policies as well as less restrictions and tariffs, their eyes lit up. Finally, the day arrived, and all of the lords and ladies of the land trickled into the Great Hall of the Dragon, each one of them dressed just as fine as the rest in different styles and colors. The settlers wore dark fine wools, while Haragians and Parthians wore brighter colors in silks and lace. Once everyone arrived, General Torash rolled the elderly Dragonlord into the hall, all in an extremely comfortable-looking wheelchair. My lords and ladies, Hera said, her slightly reedy voice clearly audible throughout the chamber due to the special acoustics of the room. I am reaching the time at which point I will go up to join my ancestors and their dragons among the stars. Because of this, I wish to have the best of my children ascend the throne and rule in such a way that the realm will flourish. Vindication is sweet, Shard thought, suppressing a smile with difficulty. Feigning a casual air, he leaned to Chimera, and Hera continued her speech. So, now do you think that this will be a vote to decide who is the next Dragonlord? He asked, interlacing his gloved fingers. Chimera grimaced and nodded slowly. You are right, she admitted grudgingly. Is everything set? Yes. The deck is quite stacked in your favor. Shard settled back into his chair and rested his chin on his knuckles. It will depend, though. If it's today, then for certain we will at least have a fair number of them. However, if we're only in a preliminary round, then for certain you will be declared the next Dragonlord. Good, Chimera grunted sourly. It shouldn't even come to this. The throne is mine by right. Shard flexed his gloved hand absently as he crossed his legs. Unfortunately, that is a matter of opinion, and that opinion is subject to your mother's policy, he said calmly. Chimera's good eye blazed, while the others stared coldly at him. It's rank stupidity, she grimaced, an affront to our bloodline. Perhaps, but best not to say that to any of the people who I've convinced to vote for you, Shard advised diplomatically. Best not to state flat out. Best not to state flat out that you despise these people when you don't have to. Best to let them live their lives with minimal taxes and have them buy into economic projects. That's stupid. Chimera made a face. If we did need money, which we don't, there are rich untapped resources in the north, or even to the east beyond Sitharis. Now that we have that country as a staging area, we can move thousands more troops into whatever lands lie beyond. Shard shook his head. The issue with that line of thinking is the notion that you can simply strip the land bare in order to feed and pay your army. He tapped his leather-clad fingers against the arms of his chair. Also, that also doesn't take into account the months that it will take to move your troops east. Sulkily, Chimera clenched her fists and snarled at him. We can't get soft and lose our edge, she growled. We won against Sitharis because we were strong. I thought your mother won because you were on the receiving end of divine providence, Shard said sarcastically. The final battle, yes, but all the others were because we have the best trained military in the known world. Chimera seemed to be only half listening, so Shard didn't press her. He had no idea what had happened in Sitharis all those years ago, but he did not believe that some great portal opened and spewed forth troops. That was likely some manner of propaganda that had been made up to prevent further uprisings from taking place. It was rather clever. Divine aid made it difficult for other rebellions to get up the motivation to attack you, especially after the claim that the gods had struck down the remaining Sitharans as opposed to them all committing mass suicide. Everyone who claims that there still remains any magic besides magic such as what has supposedly happened in Aemon's day is a fool, Shard thought. The only magic in this world is the bond between dragon and rider. If more magic existed, we would have harnessed it for wealth or war a long time ago. Supposedly there was an ancient book that explained secret magics and how to do them, but Aemond had hidden it away for safety. How convenient. For this purpose, I have gathered you to decide who should rule you, Hera declared. Each of you will cast your vote for which of my children will rule. I will give you all a period of several days in which to get to know them and see which will suit you best. The person with the most votes from you shall become the next Dragonlord. Why is she doing this? Chimera growled, pounding her fist into her palm. The line is clear. Not necessarily. Shard interlaced his fingers. Your younger sister is the daughter of Prince Narcissus and your mother, so logically she should be heir. However, you and Bale are older. That makes things complicated, as the eldest, regardless of gender, has always inherited the throne. But your sister doesn't want to be Dragonlord. Because of this, she is likely going to remove herself from the running. Chimera narrowed her eye. You've put a lot of thought into this, she said suspiciously. Do you know more about this than you're telling me? No. I just think through as many possibilities as I can. Shard shrugged, interlacing his fingers, then started tapping his index finger lightly against the arm of his chair. Limited but controlled casual movement signaled to the other person that he was unconcerned. He wasn't unduly concerned, that much was true, but certain things were up in the air. 3 out of the 7 major provinces were allied with Chimera, and their vassals would come along with them. 2 were undecided, specifically Rune and Numenor. The it was best to assume that Satharis was for bail, but he could make some offers. Currently, the vote was slanted in their direction by a majority, but it was the barest of majorities. He would have liked a 5-2 majority, but limited time to maneuver had cheated him of an overwhelming victory before the haggling could get underway. Even if one of their votes switched, then if even one of their votes switched, then his efforts would be for nothing. At least Shar would have a few more days to attempt to sway someone to his cause to ensure victory. However, there was a small chance that Bale and his wife could convince someone to join them. You're going to have to be on your best behavior over the next few days, Shard advised. If they sense that you are in any way unstable or not to their liking, then the ones that have allied with you will turn on you, giving your brother the throne. Best behavior? Chimera's narrowed eye immediately assumed a dangerous slant. What do you mean? Don't violently kill someone on a whim or do anything else that might make them view you as a bad investment. Shard suddenly moved his hands to his knees and let out a long, deep breath. If you do anything that scares them, they will turn on you, and when that happens, he subtly moved his gloved finger to indicate her brother across the room, who didn't seem taken aback, just resigned, will take the throne. It shouldn't be like this, Chimera growled. From any other person, those words would sound petulant, but from her, they were rather disturbing in their intensity. The throne is mine. Yes, but you're going to have to convince them of that, not me. Shard adjusted his long coat, then stood up as the other lords and ladies began moving into the center of the giant room to start discussing what had just happened. I suggest you make as good an impression on as you can on those 4 over there. He carefully motioned toward the 4 that were solidly aligned with them. I've told you what they want. Now you should start solidifying the promises I've made. Fine. Chimera stood up, hand resting on Darkfire's hilt. I'll do what needs to be done. Good. Shard glanced toward the Lady of Varun, then clasped his hands behind his back. Now that that's settled, I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity to discuss business with the one person who's likely to clinch your victory. Who? Chimera asked, some of the tension going away, but not much. Either Liliana or Natriana, he remarked, adjusting his jacket. It was significantly hotter here than it was in the north this time of year, but his father had taught him a trick about ignoring heat and cold. Those 2 are the likeliest to benefit from what we're doing. If Arian builds her canal, then their kingdoms stand to benefit the most from it. And since you are more willing to open the coffers to support this venue, you are the most obvious choice for leadership. Good. Chimera stood up and offered her hand. Thank you for all you're doing. I promise you won't go unrewarded for it. You know what I want, and I know that you're true to your word. Shard gave her hand a firm squeeze. They were about the same strength, though he rarely got into handshaking contests. Only idiots engaged in that sort of juvenile behavior. Chimera nodded and walked away, making a move toward the houses that Shard had gathered for her. Clearly, she wanted to talk with them and discuss things. Hopefully, she doesn't push too hard, Shard murmured. Not push? My sister? Not likely. Perion chuckled as she walked up beside him and gently kissed his cheek. How goes your work? Quite good, but I need a few more votes in order to be fully secure. Shard flexed his hands in his gloves and casually adjusted them. What votes do you not have yet? Arian asked. I haven't had much time to talk with you over the past few days because of your hard work on behalf of my big sister. I need either Liliana or Natriana's votes, preferably both, in order for it to be fully assured, he said calmly. The former is likely to have sided with your brother, though I can't fully be sure of that. So Natriana becomes the swing vote. Arian mused, eyes speculative. I imagine that she is quite aware of that fact at this point. She nodded toward the tan, young-looking Runish lady swanning her way through various groups, black strands of hair mixed with brown. None of the men seemed to mind her presence, likely because of her reputation, though for some reason the other single women seemed to flock around her, likely because they were entranced by the legendarily sex-hungry woman. Maybe they're wondering if she'll give them some of her leavings, Shard thought. There was a somewhat consistent pattern with Natriana's lovers that she would set up her friends with anyone she was finished with. Surprisingly enough, most of these marriages were quite successful by all accounts, though Shard couldn't keep his natural cynicism from considering the possibilities of small, false smiles being put over a stupid decision. Either way, we have a momentum, but we need to press it. I'll talk to her, Arian said mildly. I imagine that I can figure out something that she wants. Probably, Shard folded his arms. Arian patted his arm, then she paused. Would you be willing to put on the bargaining table? She asked casually. Shard narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? He asked. Arian slowly put her hand in his and gently squeezed it. She wants rare experiences, she explained. And what could be rarer than getting a man with self-control and a princess in her bed? Shard let out a long, low growl. Are you serious? Quite. Arian patted his arm. Shard, we are both in this for the long haul. I'm committed to you and you to me. We made that clear. Letting her into our bed even before we're married won't be a great matter. Well, hopefully it doesn't come to that. Shard rested his hand on Dark Fate's hilt. If we need that kind of ally, then our stance is weak. I think that you underestimate the value that people place on experiences that money can't buy. Irene remarked. The main allure of this is based in the notion that you have maintained your self-restraint and not dabbled. That's a rare thing. Yes, it was part of our mutual agreement that we would pledge ourselves to each other and no one else. Shard clenched his gloved hand into a fist. It'll be worth it, Shard, Irene said comfortingly. What does it cost you, really? If it happens, that is. My word, Shard said coldly. My integrity. This was a definite unexpected turn from her. He'd never expected using this sort of dealing with Natrina. He'd assumed that she would as opposed to this kind of self-indulgent gratification. No, we're bargaining with our personal value as commodities worth getting, Arian said, voice surprisingly mild. Besides, it could be fun. You're seriously going to offer this? Shard shook his head. I can't believe I'm hearing this. You have to be realistic, Shard. Arian put her cheek, then on toes to kiss his cheek. I love you. I want you to know that. Shard paused, trying to get his thoughts together. He hadn't realized how much those words meant to him until she said them. Breathing out, Shard considered what he should do if this were to happen. He'd done a bit of study on the matter, mostly as a skill that he'd need in the future. However, Natriana would likely be exceptionally experienced. Shard would have to covertly steal and then return any books in the library on that topic. Fine, he agreed. If that's what needs to be done, then I will go along with it. Irene smiled and kissed him on the lips. I'm proud of you, she said approvingly. You're sacrificing a lot for us, and I can appreciate that. Shard took off his glove and placed his bare hand on her cheek. He wanted to feel her skin with his own flesh. He'd always preferred wearing gloves. When he ate, rarely wanting to touch the world around him with his hands unless it was a special occasion. She leaned into his hand and gently kissed the palm. We will accomplish this. And that's the end.
A rather lengthy chapter today. However, I was able to mostly follow along with what was going on, and I have to say it's actually rather interesting. A medieval version of an election, essentially. And everybody's very, very natural and expected reaction to it. I'm also assuming this is how the Dowager Queen, at least I assume she is, plans to solve the issue as to who to pick out to succeed her dead husband, or soon-to-die husband. Or is she actually the monarch in charge at the moment? Because I do think that from her dialogue, it sounds like she is the one who's in charge.
She's the queen. She's just the queen because
Right,
because
because
her
you mentioned in the middle of the dialogue that men and women have both ruled the country as monarch.
Mhm.
Alright, interesting.
I mean, there were medieval elections. The Holy Roman Emperors were elected, and of course, there were elections for Parliament and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Overall, this is some very interesting, for lack of better terms, modern concepts being introduced into this fantasy setting, and I quite like how this will all play out. This seems very interesting.
There's a sort of an election in my novel too, but that's a spoiler.
So there's actually a guy in the back room, so I should probably bring him in.
Then you will die braver than most.
Yeah, sorry guys. I took a nap, and it napped longer than naps normally nap.
Yeah,
So,
because I'm going to have to go on my walk soon.
yeah, no, I would be presumptuous of me to actually read my story after missing everybody else's, except for Dunn's, which, yeah, dragon elections, like that solves all the problems.
Intrigues and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
I noticed, and it's connected to it's a kind of a sequel to the earlier thing where they did a genocide. So that's also sort of interesting. So, although the result of that is that I'm very much against the empire and I want it to collapse.
Interesting. Well, they don't often do that. It's just Hera did that to a single army, and then the people decided to just kill themselves, as opposed to.
Well, and in real life, most of the people would just have submitted.
A lot of them, yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to inform you, but I probably do have to get going.
Okay.
The family's been invited out, so
Okay.
obligations and all that. Anyway, thank you for having me on, everybody. It was nice getting some feedback and troubleshooting some ideas and concepts. Hope the best for all of you. Have a good day.
All right.
You too.
Everyone have a good night, and I'll see you next week. Hopefully I'll be awake for that.
All right. Well then, we will call it good for today. Adios.
All right.
Have a right.